Happy Devil's Tuesday. This is At the Point, coming to you live from American Whiskey. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Bruce Zeman, talking a little bit of NHL hockey as, well, across the street, there's going to be an ESPN game, New Jersey Devils versus the Florida Panthers. Hello, everybody. We're streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Well, Bruce, how are you, my friend?
I am fantastic. We finally dug out of all the snow that we had here in Delaware, and I am ready to bring you At the Point, talk a little hockey as we enjoy a Tuesday afternoon together before your game tonight at the Rock.
Well, you know what, Bruce? We had this conversation, and I think we should have this conversation again. Because I was a little surprised, because Delaware is below South Jersey, nearby. The states are right next to each other. But you told me the 18 inches of snow, it literally shut down the state like it was like the snow was in Hawaii or something like that. Like you didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it was not good. You know, I lived in Vermont for 15 years, and in Vermont, that snow would have been gone 2 hours after it, finished falling. But it shut things down. Like where I live, nothing was plowed. It was really just, it wasn't good. And the thing is, back in the day, there's only 640,000 people that live in Vermont, roughly around there. I think there's about 1 million that live in Delaware, but the population the last couple of years has been exploding. And so the folks that run the state have got to realize that this isn't really 1980 anymore. So you've got to update the infrastructure a little bit. I mean, the roads have got to be plowed. You've got to have people able to get someplace. And even the complex that I work in right now, what's today? Today is Tuesday. It snowed, last Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah.
We're still buried with snow. And so I guess, I don't know, they've got to do something to update their planning a little bit, because it was bad.
Was it really? It was that bad?
It was not good. It was not good.
You would figure otherwise. I mean, they're right next to each other, the states. But then again, I don't know. Maybe they don't get much snow usually, but that was an unusual storm. Normally the snow is more north than south, but this time around, I guess the North Jersey got unscathed from the snow with basically, an inch.
Well, it was frustrating because I'm used to having stuff gone, and it just didn't happen here. And even now, as we're doing our podcast on this Tuesday, I have glare ice in front of my house. The street is not plowed in a lot of places, so it was kind of aggravating. But listen, that's why I'm not in government.
Yeah. So, Bruce, we got a lot of topics here because this is kind of a guessing game. We should be getting into the sports betting scene because we do a lot of predictions, right? We try to predict what's going to happen. A lot of us take pride in being correct after the fact, but nobody remembers when you did say it before the fact sometimes. It's you hear all these, sportscasters, broadcasters, podcasts, everybody's making predictions. Everyone's making predictions, but it seems like the only ones they remember are the ones that they got right, but usually it's 1 out of 13 sometimes. But you're talking about the trade deadline. I know it's a couple months away, but it's the NHL season starting to shape up. But 3 teams, doesn't matter which conference, 3 teams that would be buyers at the trade deadline.
That's a great question, Sam, because we're really at the halfway point of the NHL season, and teams are trying to figure out what they're going to do. There are some teams that are going to be buyers. There are teams that are going to be sellers. And there's going to be some teams that we'll talk about in a few minutes that are going to be continuing to retool or rebuild. So if you look at the conferences, both of them, the Eastern and Western Conference, the one thing that's really interesting is in the Eastern Conference, the 10 teams are all within 10 points of each other. So picking teams that are going to be buyers or sellers from that conference are going to be a little bit more difficult because you can have a team that can run off a 7 or 8 game win streak and be right back into it. But if, looking at this as an analyst and not as a fan, it's hard sometimes because you want to root for certain teams, right? But if you are looking at teams that may be buyers at the trade deadline, the first team I have is really, really surprising given everything that they've had to deal with in the last couple of seasons. The Columbus Blue Jackets, losing Johnny Gaudreau, just some of the other things that franchise has had to deal with. Right now, they're 20-17-6. They've got 46 points. They're only 2 points out of a wild card playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. I think they may be a buyer. Two of the other teams.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you consider they lost their leading scorer, and somehow they're scoring by committee, and they're at least in the conversation. That's very surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, second half of seasons could really, kind of like the back nine. Things can happen. It's not how you start; it's how you finish. But I think the Columbus Blue Jackets are kind of a surprise team with everything that's gone on. Would they be buyers? You know what? Why not?
Well, I mean, look at what they've done considering, the tremendous loss that they had. They've really rallied, and, kudos to the whole organization for being able to put together a great season so far after that. My second team, which is a little bit of a surprise also, although I guess it really shouldn't be if you think that Steve Yzerman is at the helm of that team, the Detroit Red Wings. 20-18-4. They've got 44 points. They're only 3 points out of a wild card spot. They made a coaching change, going for their 8th win in a row, and they're right back in the conversation. And I mean, boy, Todd McClellan has been a breath of fresh air for that organization. And Sam, you know this. We've talked about, Steve Yzerman and the stuff that he did with the Tampa Bay Lightning. No real surprise that he improved that team quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a matter of time. Their rebuild has gone on for quite some time, and they did everything the right way. Their drafting has been phenomenal. So, since moving into the Pizza Arena, the old Joe was, kind of legendary, even though it was kind of, one of those modern 1980s type arenas. But then moving to, the Pizza Arena is what I call it. They haven't had much success, but they were kind of in the rebuild after Nicholas Lidstrom retired and all these other Detroit Red Wings that retired. I mean, they had a great run there in the 90s and in 2000s, but, the dynasty had its last gasp. But now this is one of their own, went to essentially college, meaning the Tampa Bay Lightning, and learned quite a bit, rebuilt that franchise into a Stanley Cup winner, essentially. He might have not been GM, but that was his team. And then moving to Detroit and kind of everything coming full circle. So, yeah, I think the Red Wings is a team to watch out for, to be honest. I'm scared of the Red Wings right now.
Well, again, all you have to do is make the big show, the playoffs at the end of the season, and anything is possible. And then my third team, also a little bit of a surprise, considering there were some rumblings that the coach's job may have been on the line. The Montreal Canadiens, Martin St. Louis, and his team, 20-18-4. They've got 44 points. They're also 3 points out of the wild card spot. But, Sam, they've been playing pretty good hockey. They are 7-2-1 in their last 10. So they've really, come around, and they could be a buyer, too, at the trade deadline. And, again, all you got to do is get into the show, and then anything's possible.
Yeah. I totally believe that. I mean, I thought St. Louis was pretty much on the way out, and then suddenly things changed. And it's hard to win in Montreal. I mean, you got the press. You got the overzealous fans, the history. I mean, how many Stanley Cups have they won in their franchise history? I think it's 23. So, there's a lot to live up to, and they've gone through so many coaches. But, Martin St. Louis, I mean, there was a reason why he was a Stanley Cup winner as a player. And, didn't he go to University of Vermont? Am I mistaken? Yeah.
No, he did go to the University of Vermont. I actually played against him.
Really?
I actually did. In a men's league in the summer one year. But, he was.
I want to hear this war story. I want to hear this war story because we can always embellish it. This is your time to shine, Bruce.
Well, I played against him in a men's league, and he was just so much better than everybody else. But if we're talking war stories, in that same men's summer league, I also played against John LeClaire.
Oh, he's big. Have you seen his hands?
Well, it was funny because I was dating a young lady who lived across the street from him up in St. Albans, Vermont. We became, friendly. And so we were playing in the Vermont Summer Hockey League, and I was pretty good when I was a player. I mean, certainly not John LeClaire level, but you could see how good he was. And he hit me so hard during a game that he actually stopped and came over to make sure he didn't kill me. So that was nice. That was classy. Thanks, John.
By the way, Phil McCrevis in the YouTube Live is asking if Fitzy's behind me. I guess from the side, Ted looks like Tom Fitzgerald.
Oh, God.
No, from the side, you do.
Thank you.
You do. You definitely do. Doesn't it look like Fitzy?
Listen, no dickheads. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, no, he actually does. With the right angle of the camera.
Nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, just look that way, and you actually do. We're going to call you Fitzy now. Anyway. Yep, it's actually Ted, but he does look kind of like Fitzy from the side. So anyway, so let's move on to the sellers. I got
right.
one.
Who do you got?
The Philadelphia Flyers. That's a strange team because they've got I think John Tortorella is a world-class coach. Last season they were unexpectedly did well, but Danny Briere, the smart GM, stayed disciplined and true to his principles. He didn't buy into the hype. He bought into the plan and sold off all those assets on trade deadline, if you remember, even when the Flyers were still in the thick of a playoff race. But then eventually they kind of, I wouldn't say collapsed, but it was expected that there was a market correction where they were because they were overachieving. But that was great for the Philadelphia Flyers because they were able to get max value at the trade deadline when they did sell. And it also proved that for a team that's rebuilding, it also proved that the GM and the people he's surrounded with Keith Jones, remember Keith Jones got pulled out from broadcasting into the front office. I mean, the Flyers have had kind of a makeover since Ed Snyder passed away. Right now it's Danny Briere's team, and I think they'll be selling, and I think that would be I think a good thing for them because I'd be scared of the Philadelphia Flyers 3 years from now.
I think you make a good point. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because I think any team that's coached by John Tortorella can do amazing things. I mean, they're only 4 points out of that wild card spot, but you're right. It may be better for them to miss the playoffs and continue retooling. But they've had some really good games this year as of late. And then earlier in the season, they had some, I guess as the term would be, growing pains perhaps. You had some benchings. You had some players that might not have been happy, but they seem to have kind of straightened things out a little bit. But I think you hit it right on the head. I think they've got a very savvy front office that will straighten things out.
But I do think, even if they were sellers, Bruce, does not mean they won't make the playoffs either. Because they're going with young talent. They're drafting. Sometimes you get the best of both worlds. In some rare instances. And the Flyers, again, I think they're overachieving. I think they're on a great path. They're not doing what the New Jersey Devils and really the Pittsburgh Penguins started that trend, is tank it, get the first overall pick a few years, and then go on your run. That's their rebuild. This is the Philadelphia Flyers where no, we're going to play our best. We're going to earn it, but we're still rebuilding. Like, they're not like tanking to get that first overall. Although it's very hard now in today's NHL to win the lottery right now. I mean, they kind of put the clamps on those kind of scenarios.
Well, and if you look at the history of quote-unquote tanking, I think maybe the Devils learned their lesson, because what a lot of people might not know is back in the day, there was only, and I can't remember exactly what the point number was, but there was only a couple of points between the Devils getting Kirk Muller or Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2 or 3 points. I can't remember, but it was only 1 or 2 games. And so, I mean, Kirk Muller was a tremendous player, but can you imagine that what the history of the Devils franchise might have been like if they had Mario Lemieux?
Or would Pittsburgh even still have a hockey team if Mario Lemieux?
Probably not.
Probably not, because the way they survived was miraculous because of all the financial situations that, the Pittsburgh Penguins were going. I mean, they were literally a bankrupt team. But Stan Fischler, the Maven, wrote an article about 20, 25 years ago. I still remember the article about the Kirk Muller, Mario Lemieux debate and the tanking and all that kind of stuff. In the end, the New Jersey Devils had better karma there because they won 3 Stanley Cups by staying the course, whereas at the time period of Mario Lemieux, they only won 2. And I would take 3 to 2 any day. Yeah.
Yeah, Mario Lemieux put that franchise on his back, and he saved it. He saved it. And actually, anybody that wants to read about what he did for that franchise, it's a pretty interesting story about how he deferred money. He did all these other things so the team would stay there, which is, a pretty classy thing.
They owed him a lot of money, and he could have liquidated the team. He could have destroyed the team. He was put in a bad spot. And, again, it's like, when you talk about history, eventually who did the Devils get for Kirk Muller? Was that Claude Lemieux, Stéphane Richer trade?
I'm going to have to look that up.
Look that up because I think in the end, because I know a lot of our fans that are watching this podcast live, in the end, the Devils, even though they didn't tank, the hockey god said, you got 3 Stanley Cups. Could have been 4. Might have been 5 had they beaten the Rangers in '94. You never know. But, to get into the Stanley Cup Finals, obviously, to play Vancouver, I think the Devils made out in the end.
So the Devils traded Muller with Rolly Melanson to the Canadiens for Tom Chorsky and Stéphane Richer.
Okay, so it's Chorsky and Stéphane Richer. I forgot how they got Claude Lemieux, but, again, Stéphane Richer was a big part of that '95 team. He was a goal scorer. Wonderful shot, Stéphane Richer, if you remember, Bruce.
He had a cannon. He absolutely did.
Yeah. Other teams that it would be selling, Bruce?
I've got the Pittsburgh Penguins because they've got a whole bunch of issues going on there. There's rumblings that Erik Karlsson might be on the way out. But again, it's interesting. So I've got 2 teams that might be sellers from the Eastern Conference, the Penguins and the Islanders. Now, the Penguins are only 3 points out of a playoff spot, and the Islanders at 17, 18, and 7 are only 5 points out. But it just doesn't seem like they've got the synergy to do anything this year. I mean, any team that is led by Lou Lamoriello has a shot, and we've seen that. But it just doesn't seem that they've got the juice this year to make a run. I mean, there's rumors that a whole bunch of players there are on the trade block. We'll have to see. And my third team, Sam, I don't think this is going to be really a surprise, from the Western Conference, the Nashville Predators, probably one of the most disappointing teams this season. 13, 22, and 7. They've got only 33 points. In the Western Conference, they are 16 points out of the second wild card spot, and that is absolutely not what the Predators expected when they started the season.
Yeah. Well, very disappointing. I think Andrew Brunette is on the hot seat. I mean, they got to do something. They got to do something. How are they going to shake it up? But you know what? Time is running out. Are they going to be on a rebuild? I don't think so. I think they're going to be retooling, for next season. I don't know why things didn't really work out. I think sometimes the big contracts and lack of team chemistry or whatnot. But you know what? I hold out hope for them that they can turn it around. But time is really running out for the Nashville Predators as we're really in mid-January right now. We're in mid-January right now. Time has flown by in this NHL season. But, really, I think the Nashville Predators, you might as well call it quits at this point.
Well, I mean, you can look at them and analyze, their roster up and down. But if we're being honest, one of the real big disappointments this year has been their goaltending. I mean, UC Saros, they signed to a huge contract. They had expectations, and he's just not putting up the numbers that they need for someone making that kind of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a number of players that haven't really performed that well this year. But Barry Trotz has got to do something. I think essentially this is my own opinion. This is not from any source I have. I think they may have started to turn the page on this year, and looking ahead to next year. But pretty big disappointment for the Predators this year.
Definitely. I'm trying to think who else would be selling. That would be a shocker to some. Is that it? Did we get the 3 teams?
That's what I got. Pittsburgh, the Islanders, and the Predators.
Okay. All right. Well, moving on. Teams that will continue to start, rebuild, or retool.
Well, we got a couple of teams that are, to me anyway, they seem to be perennially rebuilding. And it's funny because if you look at this list, 2 of the 3 teams are on that list. The Buffalo Sabres are also up there as a team that was disappointing this year. I think they expected a lot more. Right now, they're 16, 22, and 5. They're only 6 points out of a playoff spot, again, because they're in the Eastern Conference. But they just don't seem to have the horses to do it. There's rumblings that their GM, Kevin Adams, is on the hot seat. Another team that's rebuilding or retooling, the San Jose Sharks, 13, 26, and 6. They're a whole bunch of points out of a playoff spot, 17 points out of a playoff spot. But we kind of knew that was going to happen with the Sharks. Their GM, Mike Greer, has been rebuilding. They've got a ways to go. They've got some good players. They've got Celebrini now. They've got Tyler Toffoli. They reworked their goaltending, so they're in the middle of that. And then the other team, the Chicago Blackhawks, who continue to build around Connor Bedard, 14, 28, and 2, only 30 points, 19 points out of a playoff spot. They've got some work to do before they're back in contention.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was thinking of the Buffalo Sabres as well. I mean, they're just constantly, rebuilding. Even kind of like the Columbus Blue Jackets up. But I think right now, I mean, we talked about it earlier. Maybe they'll be the teams that are buying. But it seems like Columbus, with everything that's happened, I think they're going to get out of it. But they could be still rebuilding. I don't know. I mean, they tried to take that big leap forward, getting Damon Severson, obviously Goudreau, and it just hasn't worked out. But somehow this year, maybe they had a little bit of oomph this year to get over the hump. But it's going to be hard in the Metropolitan Division and even in the Eastern Conference to even get a playoff spot. I mean, I don't see how they could do it, but I can see them being in the thick of things.
Well, as we said last week, there are going to be some really good teams that don't make the playoffs this year. And what are they going to do to be one of the teams that gets over the hump next season? Because a lot of teams are doing better, especially in the Eastern Conference. I mean, as you said, Martin St. Louis, his job was reportedly on the line. They picked it up. They are moving forward. You got the Red Wings, you got the Blue Jackets, and a bunch of other teams. I mean, when you've got all 10 teams within 10 points, anything could happen. Anything could happen. I mean, you could bang out a 5-game win streak tomorrow. So it's going to be very, very interesting. The Western Conference is a lot different, but you've still got a ton of good teams in the Western Conference, but there's a lot more space between those teams.
Yeah. And let's switch topics to Devils. Let's talk about goaltending. There's been some fans crying out loud about the number 2 goalie spot, the backup goalie position. I don't know. I still think that Markstrom and Allen are 1A, 1B. Are you concerned about Allen, and do you think the Devils should make a move?
I'm not sure that they should make a move, but I am a little bit concerned that, he's 5-7-1. He's got 2 shutouts, but he's lost his last 5 games. And he's had some games where the numbers really have not been good. And it doesn't entirely surprise me because he's not playing as much as he did. But, Jacob Markstrom, I think they're going to have to lean on him a little bit more. But as the season goes on, if the numbers don't improve, they may have to look to do something. It's a tough call because we saw what he was able to do last year. We saw how good he was in stretches this season. But one of the things I was looking up when I was getting ready for these podcasts is I was just looking at his numbers this year for in those 5 games. And, the save percentage has not really been good. Let me just see here. I had this all set, and of course I got rid of it on myself. But, 5-7-2. Okay, so we've got a 3-0 loss to the Kings, a 5-2 loss to Carolina, 4-2 loss to the Blue Jackets, 4-0 shutout loss to Colorado, and a 6-5 loss to the Capitals. And in all of those games, he made 23 shots, 21 saves in that loss to the Kings. But before that, you've got a 900 save percentage, 842, 870, 813. That's not going to work. So maybe they've got to play him a little more to see if he can get that worked out. It could very well be from not playing as much.
Yeah. Well, it's... I think it's also that maybe... there was a stretch where these referees were that bad, and I
That's
don't blame
true.
them. So, I don't see anything glaring in Jake Allen's game, and the role of a backup goaltender, although I did say 1A, 1B, but the role of the backup goaltender is to give the starting goaltender a breathing room, but still remain competitive. As long as they're still competitive in these games that they lost, 5-5, the last 5, I'm not worried about it. But if they're getting blown out, Bruce, if they're getting blown out 9-0, I'd be concerned. I'd be very concerned. So I'm not.
And if you look at the teams that he lost to, Sam, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but if you look at the teams that he lost to, these are not second-tier teams. The Kings, the Hurricanes, the Avalanche, and the Capitals. The only team that is not, I wouldn't put as an elite team is the Blue Jackets. So it's not like, he's losing all these games to the...
Sorry, are they on the second half of a back-to-back? Is anybody looking at that? Because I think that Kings game is the second half of a back-to-back, and the Devils don't play well on those back-to-backs.
No, they don't. They have not played well in the second games of back-to-backs.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of that has to do with, the team in front of him. There have been some games where Jacob Markstrom, has held them in games, and they've still lost. So I'm not concerned about it, but I think it's something that's got to be on their radar. They're going to have to watch out for this because you're at the point now where you can't be giving up points to teams that you should beat.
Yep.
So
exactly. All right, Bruce. Well, that does it. Great hockey discussion, talking NHL, talking a little Devils. Place is starting to get pretty lively here. I'll turn the camera around. There's a lot of Devils fans at the bar right now. Isn't that great, Bruce? Just Devils fans here.
That's a great place.
Yeah. This is right now 2 hours before puck drop. Place is filled. It's great.
Now, it doesn't surprise me. It's a great place, and the Devils have great fans.
Yeah.
I hope you have a good time tonight. I'm going to be down there with you at some point to do some of this live, and it'll be fun.
Live. That's what I'm saying. It's live. Yeah, so we'll be here for Game Day Live I'm probably not Devil's After Dark. That's why I hate these 7:30 starts, because it's just we're here forever. But I have to go to work the next day, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hearing a discussion here, a nice order of fine alcohol here at American Whiskey. Anyway, want to thank those tuning in. Just remember, Game Day Live, Vinny Parisi and I will be live at American Whiskey and in Chicago at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And then we got Devil's After Dark after the game. Scotty of SiriusXM, Liquid Metal, and I will recap the game that was. Hit the music, Bruce. You know, I hate these virtual controls because I always mess it up. Everybody makes fun of me that I can't do it. I don't actually have a physical board here. I got to do it by hand, by mouse, a touchpad on my computer. Because if I have a mouse, I'd be knocking over beers here at the bar. So I have to
have Fitzy buy a few there.
Yeah. Yeah, he does look like Fitz. We should have a press conference with a guy that looks like Fitz from the side, at least. All right.
Absolutely.
We're going to get out of here. Thank you very much. Till next time, let's go Devils.